Hi parents, I wanted to give you a rundown for Art 1 since the back to school night is only about 7 minutes long. So if you either need to look at this after the fact, I know a lot in the very beginning of the school year, it's a lot. And if your students need to have a refresher of what they're going to be scored on and what the ins and outs of the class is, please direct them to this at home so they can review and make sure they have their understanding of expectations. I do have lots of posters around the room. I state this over and over and over about where they can find information, what their expectations are, and what they need for the class. So, this is for Art 1. The main thing for the class is that the Canvas homepage is the only place you need to go. We do not submit assignments digitally through Canvas. Students meet with me and present their projects, so that way I get that added benefit of their insight and concept. So anything for the Canvas homepage, that is where you're going to go for the class. It is our running to-do list of what we're doing each day. So right now it goes up until the 27th. So, which is today. Next, the most important thing, this is where you can find information, is the Canvas page, homepage of what we're doing in class, along with vocabulary. But the other thing is grading. That's the other big thing. It's like, where do I find information? What about grading? Grading, my system is a 4-3-2-1. So in the grade book, you should see 4-3-2-1, or hopefully we don't see any ones or zeros or anything like that. But the grading is a 4-3-2-1 system, and 0 equals that the student didn't turn anything in. So if your student ever has a 0, that means I saw nothing, they did nothing, that's it. Either they lost their project, they didn't do it, they didn't finish it. Sometimes what I'll do is everybody presents me their project, like we have meeting times during flexes and I'll start grading them. Sometimes during class time, but what they will do is they will present their project to me, and if they have no project to present, then they get a 0. They have 2 more weeks to turn it in without penalties for anything, and then after 2 weeks, I don't need to accept it. I usually accept late work though through the end of the quarter. After we've passed the quarter, no longer accept work from previous quarters. So if it is a 0, that means that your student did not do what they're supposed to do or doesn't have a project. None of the students take work home. It is too much of a stressor to remember to bring things home, and bring them back. And also, I want to make sure that the students are the ones doing the work. When they're at home, I don't see anybody creating. So to eliminate that aspect of it, I give the students plenty of time in class to do it. For example, they're just working on their visual journals right now. Each student will have 3 total hours to create their visual journal covers. So they should definitely have no problems with getting that done. And if they do need extended time, say they have an IEP or something for extended time, most of the time my IEP students or 504 students don't need extended time. But if they need it, then they can ask for it. If they are wasting time in class, then they don't get extended time. So if they're not working throughout the class block, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, then they won't get extended time. Back to the grading. 4-3-2-1 is basically mastery of a standard, meeting a standard, approaching, and attempting. So this is how it goes. 0, student doesn't hand me in anything. They don't submit any work. They don't do anything. That's a 0. Then each standard is then broken down to 3 I can statements. So say, for example, the first standard, or one of the one of the standards is that the students can use the elements of art and the principles of design in a unique work. So it's very broad. There's a lot of things under that. So sometimes with the sketchbook, I'll say that the students can use the elements of art and principles of design, and both of those lists are on the back walls of the classroom. We also discuss them about when we are brainstorming for our visual journals. But say the standard is that big standard. Then I have 3 I can statements after that standard. It says I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. If your student meets the standard of these 3 things, they can do all 3 things, they get a 3, which is a 90. They don't have mastery yet because that comes a little bit later. I'll talk to you about that. So 3, they meet all 3, they get a 90. They only meet 2, they get a 75. They only meet 1, it's a 60. Again, the 0 is they didn't turn anything in. So with that 4 comes when they're presenting their projects to me. The students must use art vocabulary and point to visual references or examples. So say example is color. And they're trying to say, hey, I use 3 elements of art on my cover. Okay, so say this is the one. I use color, because color is one of the elements. With color, I use more natural tones and earthy tones of color to match the whole motif of my antique / more natural design. So that's my color. I can also say that I have contrast. I have darks and lights here. I also have shapes. I've cut out these 4 images and they're all rectangles. So the student has to meet the standards. So they are presenting to me and showing me that they understand the vocabulary and what they were supposed to be doing. So that's that 4, that mastery. They can explain it back to me. Even if I ask them questions, they understand what I'm asking them, understanding the vocabulary that I'm using. So if they can do the work, but they can't explain it, they still get an A. And a lot of parents are like, well, you only have, or students really, you only have a 60, a 75, and a 90. How am I supposed to get a B in here? Well, if you get a B, it would be a 75 and a 90 put together. They average out to a B. I have different grades for everybody. The whole key is to be working. If a lot of the projects in here are kind of over a theme and the student has to come up with the subject matter, like what specifically they're going to do. And sometimes I find that that's really, really hard for Art 1 students, especially if they don't have any interest or hobbies. Okay, so we have grading, talked about grading. The next other thing that they are graded on is studio habits. Studio habits is based on them coming in, having their backpack hung up on the wall, and their personal items in their backpack, and they don't come back out. Setting up their supplies. Usually on the whiteboard, I have a list of what supplies they need for the day, and then on the TV next to it, if you want to see, then the TV next to it right there, it's not on, will show you any rubrics or expectations or information about what we're going to do with these supplies. So they have those 2 resources in the room. But their studio habits is based on that they're coming into the class, keeping their things away. They set up with their supplies from the whiteboard. They're ready for instruction. They are engaged the entire block. And they are cleaning up with their personal supplies as well as their studio jobs. I have the tables numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and each day they'll probably get a different job based on what medium we're using. If it's a lot of messy things, the jobs will change. So that's studio habits. It's based on that the student is ethically working in class, meaning they're cleaning up their stuff, they're putting up their stuff, they're treating the equipment properly as I've demonstrated and not using them as weapons. Yes, this still happens. Okay, so then the next thing would be pacing scores. I don't do any formatives. All of my grades are summatives. So pacing scores are basically the formatives leading up to a project combined together. So pacing scores cannot be retaken or turned in after that date that it's graded. Pacing scores are graded day of, doesn't matter for flex or anything. Everybody gets graded. It takes me, and I go to the artists around the tables. I think a lot of students were like, oh my gosh, she just grades it right there. Yeah. So like, it's very easy. Usually, so for example, one of them for last year was that they watched the video, they answered the questions, and then they came up with their own thing for what is art, and then they did planning for a project, okay? So I put it, usually it's 4 things, 4 practices before a project, and if they all have all of those 4 things, or however many things, if it's 3 things, then the mastery is that they have them all organized and can present them super fast. If they're like, wait, let me go look for this. I think it's in my bin. They don't get mastery because they're not ready and organized and ready to present really fast. Because grading the pacing scores takes about like a minute or 2 for each student. I like flip through. I'm like, okay, you got this, you got this, you got this. Great. And they're in order, and you showed, and they're labeled 4 mastery. Then you might have this other student. Oh, I did all these things, but they're out of order, but they're done completely. So they would get a 3. If a student only did 2 activities, they would get the 2. If the student only did 1 activity, they would get a 1. Usually if a student misses one of those formative days, then I kind of adjust the pacing score, or if it's so much that they miss, I just cross it out and just rely on the project grade. They might be exempt from a pacing score if they miss like a whole day or 2 days of instruction before a project. It's not going to hurt them. I don't want them to have to try and make up all this examples and experimentation. If you miss it, then that you kind of are short on experimentation. You might need a little bit more time for projects, but that's what flex is for. Okay, so pacing scores are formatives that add to a summative. This is what you can tell by if your student is doing what they need to be doing in class by studio habits or pacing scores. Because if their studio habits are low, you know it's one of these 3 things they're not doing. They're not setting up correctly, they're not cleaning up correctly, or they're not engaged the whole time. Pacing scores are they're doing the activities before the project, so their project is good. I don't want to give them a drawing assignment and say, okay, draw it just exactly as you see it, because there's different techniques and processes to help people to draw better. So I don't give projects right away. We do practices up until it, and then the project starts. Supplies. I know this is long. Supplies. There is a supply fee of $25 for Art 1. Students get an actual bag of supplies where they keep in their own personal bins. If you would like to see them, follow me this away. So these are the different Art 1 cabinets. Every student has a name with a bin. They can keep all of their personal supplies in there and their projects. Other things, if you see the rest of the classroom, there's many other cabinets with other supplies. But what Art 1 students get for their supply fee is a set of highlighters, yellow, cyan, and magenta. We do that with color theory. 2 different drawing pencils, 2 different erasers, 2 blending stumps, 3 different types of Sharpies, charcoal, compressed charcoal, various paper, any of their project paper. It's different types of paper. I don't use just regular copy sheet paper or just regular drawing paper. If we're doing printmaking paper, we're getting printmaking paper, and that's expensive. Sometimes it's like $2 a sheet. So just FYI for the supply fee, this is why. This year they are going to do a linoleum, they're gonna do printmaking, and it's gonna be a lino cut. So I'm gonna purchase little square rectangles of linoleum. So that's another price increase for that. They'll get ink pens and any types of supplies for their visual journals. There's a lot of different things in here. You can even ask them. And if students want to bring in their own thing to create their visual journal or add to things or use their own art supplies, they can do so. The only thing that they can't use is their own digital tablet. I am not allowing them to do that. I'm also not teaching any digital art in Art 1. I used to be a graphic artist before I became a teacher, and they're two very different animals. I'm hoping to have a computer art class next year, so get the word out. But this is in a nutshell of what you should expect for Art 1. If you want to know what we're doing, check the Canvas homepage. The grading is 4-3-2-1 scale. I explained that. If you want to know what your student is doing in class and how well they're doing, studio and pacing scores. That's to tell if they're turning things in and doing what they need to do daily. Project scores, they might be a good artist, so they can play it off and get a good project score, but then their other two scores might be low. So that is just what they're doing in class if they're paying attention doing their work. Supplies, the first class that gets their supplies, all their supply fees in, the entire class, they get a donut party from me. So please, please, please help them get that done. Okay. Other than that, I look forward to this wonderful year and seeing your students and having them create amazing work.